We appreciate you for joining us. Let's begin now as we are going to be looking at the U.S. election that is already looking at a tight race between Kamala Harris and the former president of the country, Donald Trump. We are being joined by Mr. Kenny Odugbemi. He's a global affairs analyst live here in the studio with us. Good morning and glad to have you join us.
Thank you very much. It's always my pleasure to be with independent television and radio, top-notch station.
Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate you. Now, take us through. It seems to be a very tight and difficult race as we speak. As at this morning, while some persons are saying Donald Trump is having an upper hand, some other persons are saying his policies might not be too okay for U.S. citizens. But let's narrow it down. How does this impact Africa as a whole?
Thank you very much. Before we go on to how it will impact, how this election will impact Africa as a whole, it's good for us to understand what is the peculiarity of African. We know now that we have a peculiar issue which is an aggregate of our domestic problem. For instance, across the African sub-region, we have bad governance, where people sit in power. We have corruption that has moved from endemic to systemic corruption. We have human right violation. That is, and also we have seen now that because of the insatiable task of African leaders to go for loan, invariably there had not been any value addition to whatever they do. It's like it's grand exploitation. You can see the Sahel country, they actually revolted against all the people that have held them in bondage and in captivity. But come to think of it, if we are now beginning to look at what impact of this election, incidentally, as of today, U.S. run a two-party state, to the best of my knowledge. Is either you belong to Democrat or you are a Republican. And also, you find out that international politics is different from our own. Our own is different. Our own mode of politics here is dealing by religious bigotry and religious sentiment and ethnicity. But that is different. That is at the local front. We are now talking of international politics. And in international politics, there are things that are involved. No policies are involved, which is called global partnership are involved, issue of trade agreement, bilateral trade agreement, multilateralism agreement, issue of security. Those are the germane issue, trade relation, human rights violation. Those are the things they do. For instance, in advanced country, they've been able to establish an egalitarian society where people know their right, where right cannot be violated, where constitution are obeyed to the letter, where the rule of law are obeyed to the letter. So I want us to both dissect the issue. What does it take? Because it is when we place two things we want to compare, we now come to a point to make justification which one will pay us. Let's first speak about Democrats. Democrats, for instance, they are known to support democratic tenets. That is, they promote accountability in governance system. They go for political stability. And they have a kind of a reform institutionalization. And they tend to form economic growth and development. That is one of those instances of democratic governance. Then you will know now that if you go to US today, there are two things, there are two institutions that have been created with a view to aid that will aid other countries, other underdeveloped continent, which we regard as Africa. The first one we call AGOA, African Growth and Opportunity Acts. That's one. The second one is President Emergency Plan for AIDS and Relief. Those are those institutions that are specially created with a view to impact the economy in a less developed continent, and they are known to have impacted positively. And also, the policies of Democrats support multilateralism. And we're now beginning to talk, and also they show concern about global change. We know now that you can see COP28, COP26, ability to have a credit rating in order to be able to follow the trend of industrialization, where carbon emissions, where people begin to talk of how do you do carbon gain. Those are the issue. Then But then Democrats support global partnership, irrespective of what they do. They tend to have a global They believe there is a synergy in global partnership, and you will see Kamala Harris has even is part of her own kind of manifesto, the campaign. Then two, the right of all women. I'm now talking of right of all women inclusive, both whether you are Latinos, you are Black American, you are African, as long as the women. The Democrat also, they have right, it's an exclusive right, you understand. And also you've seen clearly, if you look at what Biden have done, Biden, you find out that the global leader of US, they've been to West African country. I mean, even though they've not been to Nigeria, that incident, Kamala just visited Ghana, visited some of the African country. Biden too had been there too, but we've not seen any Republican coming into that way to express that kind of, with me, that has given us the impression that one, the Democrats are more amenable to the democratic tenet. So they follow economic growth, and they want accountability, and they want rule of law to be built, and also they follow tendency of human rights.
Now, looking at their manifesto so far, to an extent, in the build up to the election, the intrigue was very tough. Donald Trump has been sounding very, very Trump and mean to an extent, and of course, Kamala has been on the soft side. Now, which of these will favor Africa?
Hold on, I've not finished. You know, when I say I want to lay background, I've just tried to lay background for Democrats. That's what I'm saying. Now, come to think of it, the other one is financial reform, financial architectural reform. Okay. You find that if you look at it, African countries, when they want to take loan, they charge them almost times 4 they charge EU country. And you find out that Democrats are on that goal, despite of their policy to make sure that they have equality in what we're talking about. And let's now come to to Republicans. Republicans tend to have a bit of anti-corruption, but the anti-corruption is not far-fetched, because we've seen a lot of corruptive tendency with even their candidates. We've seen a lot of shenanigans that they're doing. They tend to support economic development, but their own support of economic development is bilateralism, is by military aid, and you find that in their own they don't tend to give room. For instance, AGOA, for instance, if you look at AGOA, for instance, most of the African countries are within the AGOA setup, and you find out that there's another BRICS now which have been established with Russia, and also South Africa too have already taken Russia by virtue of the war with Ukraine to Hague, which means, what it means is that the Republican they are diehard, in the sense that it is certain that any African country that join BRICS will be severely polished. Because what are we talking about, BRICS? Is to curb the Western imperialism, to curb Western dominance, especially when it comes to the dollar, you understand, which has taken them. Take, for instance, most of the loan we have in dollar, but for instance, US is not like another country. It is their own currency, and they tend to establish a high level of dominance. So if you look at it from that perspective, in as much as most of the support will not be towards a democratic stagnant, it will be a bilateral one. And also you find that immigrants, you find that if you look at it carefully, Kamala has a bit of issue concerning, because he herself is an immigrant anyway, you understand. But you see the Republicans have been hammering on the evasion of the immigrant, trying to limit them. Even Donald Trump was equivocal in saying that they're going to flush all those immigrants, and you find that it's because of the tendency, the stand of this the Republican represented by Donald Trump that has missed, and there are quite a lot of immigrants there. They are now throwing their net severely to support the Democrat, because they believe that by the time Trump comes in, it's as good, it's going to cut off. And you find that when you do that, it's going to affect them, diaspora remittance system. It's going to limit the growth. He believes, and also there's a strong tendency that it's going to cause a lot of aid to African country. You understand? Rather than promoting it on the other side, it's going to cut a lot of aid, which is good. For instance, when it comes to global alliances, and you find that as of today now, they are more of pro Ukraine war, because at the end of the day, it's going to stop. Donald Trump is going to stop it. He's not going to support the aid that goes into Ukraine, which means he's going to support Russia to continue to dominate. That itself it will have a significant impact on us. And also, when it comes to racial discrimination, you find out that the Republicans are more prone to racial discrimination because they favor white community. Even though some of the black community are, most of the black power are coming on board, but they favor more of white community, and those are the ones they are talking about. And then we now look at it carefully. If you compare and contrast, you will see now that even if you look at it in a clear term, you find out that even despite Obama being there, Africa did not benefit much.
Okay. All right, let's take it forward now. Looking at the U.S. focus on issue linking their country, China's influence. To an extent, they felt China have more influence in Africa. How could a shift in U.S. policy affect African economies? Interestingly,
you will see now that there's a kind of trade war. The kind of trade war between the China and the U.S. economy. You find out that China is even second, crypto. And there's been a lot of conflicts between the trade policy. There are a lot of sanctions into it. That's why we're saying that as of now, it's only Democrat that believe in establishing the good partnership. And it's only Democrat that will even try and accommodate, that even will set a pace, even despite what China is doing, they still set a pace to make it competitive. So the only thing that will save this to Africa is to go for the democratic governance, in which there will be a level playing ground. It's a global partnership. There will be a synergy. It will be a win-win affairs. Unlike when we now begin, because there's a trade war, because the U.S. for instance, is after China because of the global influence, because they believe that the China has a lot of tremendous impact in Africa, and that is true because they've established, they've institutionalized themselves, rather than, for instance, by the virtue of the long-term loan they give. There's hardly any African country that do not have a kind of multilateral relationship with China, and also that is as a result of loan. And you can even see that, not saying now that despite the fact that we're relating to China, despite the multilateralism, it doesn't mean we don't still have the problem. We don't have problem in it. You understand? Problem in terms of the domination, problem in terms of being exercising undue power. We've seen what happened in Zambia. So, well, it's only a win-win situation we're looking at. But if you look at it from policy, from security point of view, from bilateral, from global synergy, we should tilt towards Democrat. But however, that is not saying now that Republican will not also offer economic growth. But if you look at it, we're more of Africa with more of a benefit towards that. Because for instance, under Democrat, they won't be after BRICS. You understand? They won't be able to lay siege on us, trying to punish. But Republican will punish. In fact, let me tell you, if Republican comes on board, then it is issue. South Africa will be the first. So I want to submit to the fact that now it is better. Africa will gain much more from Democrat rather than a Republican, if you look at it carefully.
But looking at the results so far, it seems, though it's a very tight election so far, but it seems to be favoring Donald Trump's party. But do you think Africa can ever be liberated from dependency on foreign aid from the U.S.?
Let's be frank. You will see. We cannot equivocally say it's going to, because the election is a shift. It's all a tight corner. You win some, you lose some. For instance, women domination have supported more of Kamala Harris now. It's only the black power that, and it's the only thing that is causing a shift now in the US is because of the black power. Some of them are quite not supporting Kamala Harris. And also the issue of gender comes into you. You can also recall the issue what happened with Senate Clinton. You understand? So most of all these factors are coming in board. But as of today, why we cannot equivocally say is that our fundamental problem, we need to first resolve our fundamental problem. Our fundamental problem was the issue that I raised, that look, have we been able to offer good governance to our people? Have we been able to stop our insatiable task for loan? Have we been able to see now that we improve on welfare packages? You can see what is happening in Nigeria. We still have that problem. Bad governance is still on the board. And also, even the World Bank is still saying now that we need to social intervention should be improved in order to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. So, for us to benefit, we have to, there has to be a tenet. There has to be a standard. We have to first clean ourselves of the shenanigans of what we've been going through in terms of of being able to offer qualitative governance, be able to show welfare packages to our people, be able to stabilize the issue of energy, and the issue of us not giving almost all over the world they give subsidy, but it's only in this country we'll be able to receive. Look at the energy subsidy, look at the petrol. We'll not be able to standardize it. These are all our local problems. Torinka, each of us subsidy is a local problem. It's not has been issue raised by the World Bank. World Bank, if Kole saying that, they were not the one. That is a local problem. So for us Africans to benefit from whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, we first need to solve our teaching problem, especially human right violation. Look at this recent case we've just established in Nigeria, where we have juveniles being kept in incarceration for more than 90 days because they felt, they were the treasonable felony, and the treasonable felony charge you were talking about holding a Russian flag.
The charges have been dropped anyway.
The charges have been dropped, but they are now going for further. But the issue is this: before it comes into that kind of thing, what are the issues? The charges have been dropped against the juvenile. It's over 100 and something they take, about 130 people they catch. They only release about quite sizable some of them, which is some other people are still going to go through it. But rather than that, we should first deal, how did we get into this? And also releasing the juvenile, I agree we should release, but must we encourage such a thing? Because they go on white vandalism. I also want to believe, apart from this, they should be relieved from that treasonable felony, but they need to go to correctional center in order to order them. We are all more or less giving another room for Boko Haram. As of today, Lakura once, another terrorist group is also coming on board in Sokoto State, which means if care is not taken, it will still leverage on these people because they take it as a right and a privilege.
Okay, so what specific areas in African economy, such as energy, agriculture, or technology, are most impacted by U.S. election outcomes and policies?
Interestingly, if you look at it, energy is quite very important, but issue of multilateralism is quite very germane. Issue of trade partnership, issue of industrialization. I think those are the ones that are key, because you see we are less developed country. So industrialization should be and industrialization, energy takes the whole, global economy takes the whole, and also the issue of climate change is very germane to us. So we should begin to do, those are the areas that that Africa will benefit more. That's why I said, if you look at it now as of today, the only party that is mentioning about that is they are all Democrats. But we know now that this election will be a tight day. Remember, even if anybody wins, there is tendency to still go to electoral college, just like we had in the past. But I believe whichever way we look at it, Africa should stop the dependency on the US. There's a need for us to look more. So we need to begin to look inward in trying to find alternatives in order to ensure that we're able to create some survival strategy. That's why I'm saying the issue of BRICS is germane to us now. We should be able to leverage on them to stop this Western imperialism, to stop this total complete dominance of complete scotland and high level of self-sufficiency to the Western world through the aid and development. And also we need to stop that corrupt tendency. The corrupt tendency is high. The ethnicity, the bigotry has also diminished, and you find out that political instability. These are all the issues that have lowered the edge. And you know, when you lower the edge, the serpent to burn. So I think Nigeria and Africa, we need to reposition Africa on the pedestal of global economy. That it is that we can benefit from the giants.
Okay, to an extent, even those in US, they are also complaining that their economy is not stable. Cost of grocery has gone high. And of course, they are also battling with the issue of losing their jobs on a daily basis. But some are saying if the Republican come on board, there might be a kind of cut of the foreign aid coming to African countries. But while others are saying no, if the Democrats come on board, it's going to be a win-win for Africa country. Let's help make sense of this.
Let's be frank. You will see, even from the policy that Donald Trump number, is going to increase a lot of tariff. And when you increase
for African countries,
no, it's going to increase tariff, so that to some sort of limit the for the trade balance between the two countries. It will limit what comes into it, to actually see now that they limit the inflow that comes. The kind of the trade partnership will be restricted. The kind of commodity that comes into the U.S. country will be there. That's why they're paying high tariff on those ones. So that if you pay a high tariff to import them, you reduce the consumption tendency on this. You now want them to look inward, and that will affect other economy other than the US. So I'm saying now that yes, if you look at it, everything has its own merit and demerit. But come to think of it, which one pays Africa? Is it multilateralism or bilateralism? I think multilateralism will buy Africa. I think global partnership will buy Africa rather than being solo. Because if you look at it, and under Republican, they are probably going to go solo. They are to be for themselves alone, not considering the impact. They are going to reduce aid. If you look at it, whichever way you look at it, conflict, which means they will be for themselves alone. And if they are for themselves alone, it will affect development in other countries. So I'm still saying that whichever way you look at it, I really want to. I will, in terms of policy, trade relation, is only the only area that will not see much of a difference is Security Council, because even other past presidents have not done more. Obama did not do much, and you know all about power. US still want to dominate, to be a major dominance in power. So we begin to see in terms of Security Council, we might not be able to support Africa in being part of the world. But I still think that whichever way we look at it, we should also, Africans should come to a point of stopping their dependency on this Western power. There's a need for us to know God has blessed us with natural resources. God has blessed us with human capital. The only thing is to set a better template to be able to harness the potential that we have and to be able to see ourselves in ourselves. You know, the good governance we're looking at is that because if people in America did not build America, America would not be like that. The concept of patriotism is high in America, but African patriotic, no. You find out, you see what is happening. Look at Kenya, for instance. Look at what happened because of a protest increase in food security from 4% to 7%. Look at the kind of devastation they call. Look at what really happened. And as of today, they're still going for this loan. I'm saying now that Africa should put themselves on the right pedestal. We have enough resources. We should look at what. I'm not saying we might not be able to take loan. Taking loan should be for development, not for consumption, not to be able to pay debt. For instance, Nigeria is taking loan to pay debt.
So it seems our leaders are depending on the loan.
They are depending on the loan because of it's an insatiable task for the loan. Okay. And it's because of the heavy corruption. The current expenditure is extremely high. So, look, as of today, the debt we have in Nigeria is over 134 trillion. It's 134 trillion. As at May 29, 2023, we were on 77 trillion. So the difference between that time and now is over 60-something trillion. Okay, and we begin to see what gains.
With increasing attention on global supply chains, how might U.S. election outcome impact African participation in these chains, especially industries like mining and manufacturing?
Take for instance, the resources, we have a whole lot of heavy resources in African country. Some of us, they have immense gold. If you talk of Mozambique, if you talk of Kenya, if you talk of quite a lot of countries, if you talk about Nigeria, the concept of the internationalization has to tendency with global partnership. Which of these parties has established policy of trade relations? It's still the same Democrat we are talking about. So, but let's look at it. That's not saying now that the Republican will not do, but they will limit it because they believe they will reduce it. You know, without it, we can't achieve much in Nigeria because of the quality of governance structure that we have. We really need people to come in and establish industry rather than taking. For instance, if you look at the Democrat, if you look at Republican, they follow business as usual. It is visual exploitation, having trading with our mineral resources taken there without value, you understand, to some sort of to trade. But now with Democrat, we'll be able to add values to it. So I'm saying now that we should look inward. I believe now that yes, whichever way you look at it, we will have, to the best of my knowledge, the only particular game we have under Democrat is under Democrat governance. They will not look at what we're doing, which means we will still continue like business as usual according to what we're doing. Would that favor us? The answer is no. But under Democrat, because they believe in governance system, they will still come. There's a lot of discussion going on between Joe Biden. So
you think the Republican will be more tougher in their decisions?
The Republican will not even want to look at what we're doing, which means we will still continue business as usual in Africa. But Democrat will intervene. For instance, in fact, take for instance when the issue between when the issue happened between an American, when the cryptocurrency, as of today we heard that Joe Biden intervened, has to even put a call through to our president, which means now that they are sensitive to global politics. They are sensitive to issue of security. They are sensitive to human rights violation. Unlike the Republican that will not care about what you are doing, they only care for their people. They only care for white supremacy. I'm saying now that, look, for us to have a balance, for us to move from the status quo, for us to benefit from AGUA, for us to benefit from presidential army that supports the aid, Democrats are the way to go. But we also should begin to look inward.
So if Republicans come on board, what is the fate of African exporters? Because we have those exporting things to US and other countries.
What it means is that there will still be trade. But I still say there won't be more of global synergy. It will be bilateralism. It will be like usual trade they were doing. It is not like developing them. It will still be on concept of exploitation.
Okay.
Though we might have a ripple effect on economic growth. Because whichever way we go, $1 will still have more value than many of Naira, many of African currency. But I'm still saying that to the best of my knowledge, it is true. The only gain we can have under Republican is they will not bother about what they're doing, which in they will still leave us business as usual. What I want us to go for something sensitive, something that will create a balance, in what we're doing, something that will enable us to have a political stability, one thing that will aid a global partnership. We're talking about global partnership, not a dominant. We're talking about a win-win situation. We're talking about a stage when we also put in value, when there's a value exchange of value proposition. We're talking about ability to be able to establish a growth strategy. That might not happen under Republican.
Okay, before we let you go now, as African nations work towards economic self-sufficiency, how significant is the impact of U.S. leadership changes on their economic strategy and partnership with other global parties?
You see, leadership determines the direction. And the leadership we're talking about is in line with the policy and the constitution that guide them. We know the superpower is in US. They hold a lot of influence in international policies, in security, in trade partner. So what we need to do is that we also need to have a reform, improve on our reform, so that at least it will be visible enough for them to engage in. Now we know now that if the public comes in, they will be a bit strict in what. For instance, the opportunity will be limited, which means we need to up our game. We need to carry a lot of reform. We need to follow strictly on the standard practice in terms of global strategy, in terms of trade relation, in terms of the way we do company, in terms of ease of doing business, in terms of the knowledge base. We need to improve on knowledge base. But I want to believe that we need a lot of reform, a lot of improvement in the African continent for us to be able to benefit in a Republican state, right? But it doesn't mean we don't need to do much, but because of the liberalization, economic liberalization, we're likely to be favored more by Democrats than a Republican setup.
Your body language, you seem to believe in the Democrats a lot.
Honestly, I believe in Democrats. The reason why is that they believe in synergy. They believe in trade partnership. They believe in multilateralism. They believe in supporting true aid. They believe in supporting growth. They will not leave you alone. For instance, the US is still calling Nigeria to look at also political instability, to look at our election that went on. Everybody shows concern concerning what we're able to do. But under Republican, we will not have those ones. So if there are no people that are watching after us, you can imagine what our leader will do. So I believe now that we should undergo a total reform in our political life, in our social life, in our economic life, and also we should make a deliberate policy not to be dependent on aid, because we are blessed beyond measure, in terms of our resources, instead of human capacity. Look at the giant. Look, there's no country today you don't have Nigerian blazing trade. Look at the economies of this world. Look at the Kodjowala of this world. Look at Kemi Benok of this world. These are Nigerian, even though they have a Nigerian descent, which means we see how much more them. Even if you look at the people that occupy the world record, about 5 of them in health, they are all Nigerians. They are all Nigerians. Look at the man that created the impact in surgery. You understand? He's a Nigerian. Look at all those. Look at, if you're talking about the people that have professional company, it's Professor Shoyinka is a Nigerian. You understand? And even is coming from the southwestern. So what we're saying is that Nigerians were blessed beyond measure. Let us harness. Africa is blessed beyond measure. Let us harness a human potential. Let's resource our resource potential to put ourselves not on a pity party way, to put ourselves on an enviable position that we're now in a position to negotiate for our existence.
Okay, now lastly, corruption is one thing we are still fighting in this country. Now, you said, according to you, that the Republican will not favor us. Now, you should know that Democrats too, to an extent, they will not condone corruption.
Well, I didn't say they will not favor us. I say, what I said is they will leave us to our feet,
okay,
to do business as usual. You understand? For instance, if up till today, even throughout his 4-year reign, Republican did not bother to say an African country. You know, the presence of a U.S. president in a country speaks a lot about diplomacy, speaks a lot about the issue of diplomacy, speaks a lot on the general conduct in terms of corruption, in terms of economic disposition. So what we're saying is this: we're saying now that if Republicans come in, there might not be a political walkthrough, there might not be economic walkthrough, because they're only after themselves. But if Democrat comes in now, there will be a watchdog over other development, because the development, they want a kind of grassroots development to come on board. Okay. But what we'll still insist is that we should go for a total reform in African sub-region, for us to put ourselves at a point now that we can now begin to negotiate for our existence, not oppress, not suppress, by virtue of our task for loan.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very
Mr. Tumbakani, for always being on the board.
Thank you very much.
All right, this is our package from our Lagos studio. We'll hand you over back to Benin Network studio to take it up from there. Thank you very much for being part of it.